"If you're so good," he spat, slamming the contract down on the counter with his palm, "then translate this." His words sliced through the warm buzz of Old Town Café like a razor, freezing forks midair in every diner's hand. Even the battered jukebox in the corner seemed to pause its soft Motown melody, but Emily Davis didn't flinch. She simply leaned over the thick stack of pages before her, the Kessler Corp merger agreement that had stumped Atlanta's top 3 lawyers, and blinked once. At 19, she was a black woman wearing a faded silver-gray apron, still tinged with the scent of fries and coffee. Yet, in that moment, she stood more firmly than the man in the Navy suit glaring at her. Michael Carter wasn't used to being challenged. At 48, he'd grown Carter Technologies from a small Boston programming shop into a billion-dollar tech empire headquartered in downtown Atlanta. His presence in a boardroom was legendary. Icy gray eyes, a jawline sharp as a blade, always thinking 3 moves ahead. But tonight, he wasn't in a glass tower. He was in a no-frills diner with scuffed Formica tables and flickering neon lights, wrestling with a deal worth billions that would cement his standing in a tech world on shaky ground. He needed somewhere to think. Emily had just set his coffee in front of him when she noticed the tension etched on the famous CEO's face. Without hesitation, she ventured, "Looks like you're in a bit of trouble." Michael didn't lift his head. His gaze remained locked on the dense legal text. His voice was cold. "You wouldn't understand. This is a legal contract, not a menu." Emily smiled softly and placed a glass of water on the counter. "You never know. I might." Her calm reply drew a sneer, and his mocking provocation followed. He intended to teach this young woman a lesson about arrogance and ignorance, but he couldn't have guessed that his challenge would mark the start of a fateful journey, one that would change both of their lives. The kitchen door swung shut behind Emily, but her words lingered around Michael Carter's table like ripples in a pond, slowly unsettling him. Here was a battle-hardened CEO, proud of his ability to control every situation and read every opponent, now sitting speechless before the insight of a young waitress. The kitchen door swung shut softly behind Emily, but the echo of her words hovered around Michael Carter's table, like ripples spreading across still water, slowly rocking his mind. A veteran CEO, proud of his mastery over every situation and his uncanny ability to read opponents, sat silent now, stunned by the insights of a young waitress. Michael lowered his head and stared intently at the contract Emily had just dissected. His eyes scanned the minute print, each intricately woven clause on those harmless-looking pages. His hand trembled slightly when it came to Section 7 that Emily had flagged, a clause he'd glossed over countless times without ever spotting the lurking peril. The word temporary, printed in bold in the middle of the paragraph, had seemed as innocuous as any other. But now, thanks to Emily's sharp eye, it shone like a blazing red warning light before him. That single word would allow Kessler Corp to walk away from the deal, withdraw their entire $400 million deposit without penalty, and leave his company stranded. A wave of dread crashed over him. He could almost taste the nightmare scenario, his life's work undone, a billion-dollar empire slipping through his fingers. Fear crept into his chest, something he hadn't felt in decades of cutthroat deal-making, realizing defeat was looming fast and unexpectedly, like a sudden Georgia summer storm. Worse still, Emily had pointed out that Kessler Corp's demand to hold the $400 million deposit with no clear disbursement conditions wasn't a safeguard for the transaction at all, but a devious financial trap designed to strangle and manipulate his company at its weakest moment. How could she see this so quickly? Michael whispered to himself, equal parts astonished, annoyed, and embarrassed. His highest paid lawyers, garnering millions a year, had pored over this contract without spotting a single red flag. Yet here was a 19-year-old in a grease-scented apron, and in mere minutes she'd uncovered its deadliest flaws. Meanwhile, in a gleaming high-rise office downtown, Stephen Mitchell, head of Michael's legal team and the very man who'd drafted and reviewed this contract, sat in his sleek black suit, wearing a self-satisfied smile as he anticipated praise from Kessler Corp's leadership. No one at Carter Technologies suspected that Stephen, always the dependable, unflappable professional, had clandestinely allied himself with the rival company in this deal. Stephen Mitchell was the type of man brimming with overconfidence, handsome but cold, with steely gray eyes that pierced like daggers and a silver tongue that won over any room. After years in Michael's shadow, he'd grown bitter and jealous, convinced Carter's success was mere luck. That simmering resentment had driven him to betray Michael, secretly colluding with Kessler Corp to weaken his boss's power. With this contract, Stephen had expertly buried traps in the subtlest provisions, giving Kessler Corp total leverage. Once signed, a minor market hiccup, a false rumor, a negative article, could trigger a wipeout of Carter Technologies, and Stephen would step in to claim the top spot he'd long coveted. What he hadn't counted on was that his perfect scheme would be unraveled by Emily Davis, an unknown waitress whose keen intellect and razor-sharp instincts outmatched anyone he'd ever met. Back at the café, Michael felt his mortification give way to a growing respect for Emily. How had this young woman penetrated the layers of his carefully hidden plot when he, an iron-willed CEO seasoned by decades of tough battles, had been blind to it all? In that moment, his arrogance, his lifelong shield of pride, cracked. For the first time, Michael Carter wanted to see someone not through the lens of status or age, but by genuine ability. A sudden decision crystallized in his mind. He rose quickly, leaving a hefty tip on the counter, and strode out of the cafe. Just before the door swung closed, he glanced back at Emily, who was busy behind the espresso machine, her eyes brimming with determination. He knew he couldn't let this remarkable woman slip from his life so easily, and he had no idea that his choice to seek her out again would set off a chain of events far beyond anything he could imagine. One that would reshape not only his own destiny, but the fates of countless others. A hidden war among ambitious players was about to erupt, and Emily Davis, with her brilliance and unbreakable spirit, was about to enter a fight she never saw coming. The next afternoon, just as warm golden sunlight filtered softly through the weathered windows of Old Town Café, Michael Carter's luxury sedan rolled up to the curb once more. He stepped out, hesitated for a heartbeat, then resolved to go inside. The little bell above the door tinkled sharply, and Emily looked up from behind the espresso bar. When their eyes met, Michael sensed a flicker of tension in the depths of Emily's gaze. She quietly set down the coffee cup, her posture calm, but her eyes shone with guarded alertness. Clearly, his unexpected return had unsettled her. Michael approached the counter slowly, wearing what he hoped was a friendly, composed expression. Emily's nimble hands continued drying coffee mugs, but she remained silently watchful, waiting for him to speak first. "May I have a word?" Michael asked gently, avoiding her wary eyes by staring at the neatly lined cups on the wooden shelf. Emily paused, then gave a slight nod and laid her cloth on the counter. "Would you like more coffee or something else?" He shook his head, a small smile forming. "No, I'm not here for coffee today. I came back to thank you for what you said yesterday. You saved me from a huge disaster." Emily's brows rose in obvious skepticism. "It was just a few suggestions. Nothing really significant, Mr. Carter." Michael noticed the firmness in her tone, and it irked him slightly, but he understood why. A powerful man like himself, used to controlling every outcome, thanking an unnamed young waitress was highly unusual. Emily had every right to be suspicious. "I'm absolutely serious, Emily," Michael said, using her name for the first time. She blinked in surprise. "You have no idea. But you just prevented me from losing $400 million, and the control of the company I've spent my life building. That wasn't just a casual tip, it was extraordinary." His sincere words softened Emily a bit, but the caution in her eyes remained. She furrowed her brow and tilted her head, searching his expression for any hint of insincerity. "I just happened to notice a few things," she said. "You don't need to make it sound more than it was." Michael leaned in a little, his voice low and earnest. "I know you don't believe me, Emily, but I've never met anyone with your analytical sharpness and precision. You spotted things my top legal team completely overlooked. That not only surprised me, it impressed me." Emily was silent for a long moment, her gaze fixed on his face as if probing for proof that he wasn't joking or hiding an ulterior motive. "If you're only here to say that," she finally replied, "then thank you. But I'm not sure what you really want from me." Michael was taken aback by her directness, but also struck anew by her strength and resolve. He felt it would be a shame to let such potential go to waste behind this small cafe counter. He spoke gently, his eyes serious and steady. "I apologize if my approach made you uncomfortable, but believe me, I'm not playing some joke. On the contrary, I think you can do far more than this. The skills you demonstrated yesterday far exceed those of the professionals I pay a fortune every year." Emily frowned. Her suspicion mingled with a hint of confusion. Michael pressed on, his voice growing firmer. "I didn't come here to patronize or exploit you. I came to offer a serious conversation. I want to learn more about you, your life, your dreams. I have a feeling you have plans and ideas you've never had the chance to pursue." Emily stood still, battling the emotions rising within her. She knew all too well how her life had become a series of sacrifices and postponed dreams for her family's sake. She wasn't yet certain she could trust this enticing but risky offer from Michael. "Mr. Carter, I'm not one of your charity projects," Emily said bluntly, meeting his gaze. "I don't need pity." Michael gave a respectful smile. "You misunderstand, Emily. This isn't charity. I want to give you an opportunity, a real change, but only if you want it. I believe we can help each other. I have the resources, and you have a rare talent I've never seen before." A brief silence passed before Emily exhaled slowly, her eyes softening for the first time. She allowed herself to consider an alternate possibility, a different life where the dream she'd shelved might be reborn. "So, how serious is this conversation you want?" Emily asked at last, her tone less defensive. Michael returned her nod with warmth and hopeful determination. "Meet me here after your shift ends today. I'll be waiting at the same table as yesterday. Let me listen to what you want, and then we'll see how we can move forward. Together." Emily gave a small, tentative nod, a spark of hope lighting her eyes. She didn't know what lay ahead, but one thing was clear: this second meeting would mark a turning point. Not just for Emily, but for Michael Carter as well. The clock on the wall of Old Town Café chimed 10 o'clock, its soft bells blending with the steady patter of rain against the windows. The shop was hushed now, the last customers gone, leaving only Emily and Michael seated across from each other at the small table by the window, where the warm, golden lamplight seemed to enfold their two very different stories. Emily sat quietly, gazing out into the gray afternoon, her eyes drifting to some distant place where old chapters of her life were reopening. Michael waited in silence, patient and understanding, as if he'd stay all night just to hear what she was about to say. At last, Emily drew a deep breath and looked down at the table, her voice low and reflective. "I once thought my future was set, Mr. Carter. I earned a full scholarship to study law at Emory University. Back then, I believed the law was the key to changing my life and the lives of people like me. But life has its own way of breaking every plan." She paused, and Michael remained silent, listening intently. "My mother was diagnosed with chronic kidney disease during my first year at Emory. I had to choose between continuing school and earning money for her treatments, for medications, and to support my younger brother, Danny. He needed me more than ever." Her voice caught as the memories flooded back, raw and painful. "Danny struggled in school. He was bullied for our poverty. No one stood up for him. So I dropped out, working 2 or 3 jobs at once just to pay my mother's medical bills and keep Danny in class. Emory became a dream, unfinished, a memory." Michael was moved as he listened to Emily's story. He looked at her. Just yesterday he'd viewed her with skepticism. And for the first time he truly understood the pain, sacrifice, and burden she carried. Emily met his gaze, her eyes clear but blazing with extraordinary strength. "But I never completely gave up, Mr. Carter. Every night after my shift, I kept reading law books, studying clauses and regulations, because I knew if my mother or brother ever faced injustice or abuse, legal knowledge would be the only shield they'd have." Michael's brow furrowed as he sensed her resilience and noble purpose. He realized she was more than just a gifted youth beaten down by circumstance. She was someone determined to fight fate with everything she had. Emily's voice grew more animated, passion lighting in her eyes. "I have an idea, a dream, to build a simple, user-friendly app that helps people like my mother and brother, or anyone, understand the most basic legal rights and processes. A tool so everyone can protect themselves and not suffer injustice simply for lacking legal know-how." At that, Michael smiled with genuine admiration and emotion for her righteous vision. But thinking of the hardships she'd endured made his heart ache. He understood better than anyone how injustice and inequality often arise from society itself. Elsewhere in the city, Stephen Mitchell sat in his luxurious apartment, a glass of whiskey in hand, his face tightening with scheming resolve. He'd just learned that Michael had uncovered the hidden clause in the contract and was correcting course. Rage surged through him. His carefully laid plan was in danger of collapsing because of an unknown waitress. He stared at his phone screen, determined not to let his scheme be undone so easily. Stephen resolved that he would remove Emily Davis at any cost, or at least make sure she could no longer interfere. To him, she had become the #1 enemy to his perfect plan. Back at the café, Michael slowly set his coffee cup on the table and looked at Emily with unwavering determination and trust. "I want to help you make that dream a reality, Emily. You deserve a second chance to pursue your ideals." Emily's eyes widened in surprise as she searched his face for any sign of insincerity. All she saw was absolute earnestness and unwavering resolve. You really mean it?" she asked, still a bit doubtful. "I do," Michael affirmed. "I have the resources and experience to bring your idea to life. But I need you to trust me, Emily. Will you?" Emily sat quietly, wrestling with the flood of emotions within her. Finally, she gave a gentle nod, her eyes shining with gratitude and determination. "All right. I trust you, Mr. Carter." In that moment, the rain outside ceased, and the gray clouds parted to reveal a soft, glowing moon above Old Town Café. Neither Michael nor Emily knew that this conversation would not only transform their own lives but also set in motion the stormy battle ahead. A battle between justice and ambition, between trust and betrayal, waiting silently on the horizon. The first rays of dawn streamed through the floor-to-ceiling glass of the Carter Technologies building as Emily Davis stood rooted at the entrance, her heart racing with excitement and nerves. Today marked a major turning point, her very first day at Atlanta's leading tech firm, and the moment Michael Carter had entrusted her with the most precious opportunity of her life. Inside, the corridors stretched out under the cold glare of fluorescent lights. Emily's first footsteps echoed softly on the polished marble floors. Her eyes scanned the hallway, searching for a friendly face, but all she found were curious, skeptical glances from busy employees rushing past. That unease was confirmed when Emily was shown into the large conference room, where Stephen Mitchell, a middle-aged man with steely gray eyes and an austere expression, waited. He turned as she entered, his gaze sharpening into a mocking stare. "Welcome, Ms. Davis," Stephen said slowly, his tone laced with sarcasm. "I'm afraid we need to postpone this morning's meeting. We're not quite ready to hear your ideas yet." Emily froze for a moment, gathering her composure in the face of his obvious disdain. She recognized that Stephen wasn't merely a tough boss. He was a hidden saboteur with deeper motives. Still, she resolved not to let her emotions betray her. "I understand, Mr. Mitchell," she replied evenly. "May I ask why the meeting has been postponed?" Stephen leveled a challenging look at her and let a half-smile curl at the corner of his lips. "We have some more pressing legal matters to attend to. A small discussion about your unproven concept isn't our top priority right now." He deliberately emphasized her inexperience, then glanced at the colleagues standing nearby, as if to reinforce the idea that she had no business being there. A slow burn of anger flared within Emily, but she forced herself to take a steadying breath. "I believe Mr. Carter has good reason to prioritize this project. However, if you've decided otherwise, I'll wait." Stephen folded his arms and nodded with a satisfied smirk. "By all means, though I can't say when we'll be ready." Over the next week, Emily encountered one obstruction after another at Stephen's hands. Her special access to the company's internal data, granted personally by Michael, was repeatedly locked without explanation. Emails she sent to team members were intercepted, delayed, and effectively buried, jeopardizing her ability to make any progress. Whenever she entered the legal department or the meeting rooms, she could hear whispered ridicule and see suspicious looks from co-workers, seated by Stephen's insinuations that she was unqualified. Stephen, with his sharp intellect and ruthless tactics, was determined not only to derail Emily's work, but also to destroy her reputation at Carter Technologies. In his eyes, she threatened his carefully plotted ascent within the company hierarchy, and he would stop at nothing to eliminate her. One late afternoon, Emily decided to confront Stephen directly in his office. She knocked lightly, then entered when he nodded. He was seated behind a massive desk, eyes fixed on his computer screen, pretending not to notice her. "I need to talk with you, Mr. Mitchell," Emily said, keeping her voice calm. Slowly, he looked up, his expression dismissive. "What's so important, Ms. Davis?" She stepped forward and met his gaze head-on. "You know why I'm here. My system access keeps getting shut off, and my meetings keep being postponed. I'd like an explanation." Stephen leaned back, a cold smile playing on his lips. "Emily, who do you think you are? A young woman with no credentials, no experience, barging in and expecting this entire corporation to cater to your untested ideas. I'm only protecting this company's interests." With mounting resolve, Emily held his stare. I think you're misunderstanding my purpose. I'm here because Mr. Carter believes in my abilities. I'm not asking for favors, only for a fair chance to do my job." Stephen rose from his chair and stepped closer, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "Fair? Fair belongs to people who've spent decades proving themselves, like me. You're lucky, Miss Davis, but luck doesn't last forever. I suggest you step aside before things get worse." Tension crackled between them, but Emily refused to back down. "I don't know what schemes you're planning, but I won't give up. I'm here to fulfill the mission Mr. Carter entrusted to me. No matter how hard you try to block me, I will persevere." Stephen's jaw tightened, his eyes darker than before. In the silent standoff, Emily turned on her heel and walked out, each footstep echoing decisively on the cold floor. As her silhouette receded, Stephen watched her go with grim determination. He would not allow a newcomer like Emily Davis to unravel the meticulous plan he had spent years crafting. Thus began the battle between Emily Davis and Stephen Mitchell, one that would shape the future of Carter Technologies from this very moment on. The morning of the big meeting at Carter Technologies felt charged with tension throughout the building. Emily entered the conference room with steely resolve, her gaze sharp yet calm, like a soldier about to face the greatest challenge of her life. She knew today's battle would decide not only the future of the Lawbridge project, but also her standing and reputation within the company. At the far end of the room sat Stephen Mitchell, his expression icy, his eyes challenging hers. Emily knew he'd prepared every tactic to undermine her presentation, but today she was determined not to let anything stand in her way. Once the room filled with staff and key developers, Michael Carter appeared. He shot Emily an encouraging look that bolstered her confidence. He nodded gently, signaling it was her turn to begin. Emily rose and moved to the large screen at the front of the room. She glanced around, catching curious and skeptical looks from her colleagues, as well as the barely concealed hostility in Stephen's eyes. She took a deep breath and began in a clear, confident voice. "The project I'm presenting today is called Lawbridge. It's not just another app. It's a straightforward, powerful legal education tool designed to help the most vulnerable people in our society." Stephen cleared his throat and interrupted with a sneer. "Pardon me, but Ms. Davis, could you clarify the feasibility of this charitable initiative? Carter Technologies is a major corporation, not a nonprofit." Emily met his gaze steadily, unfazed. She had anticipated this challenge. "With all due respect, Mr. Mitchell, this isn't charity. Lawbridge can become a leading platform to help millions of everyday people understand their basic legal rights. If you still doubt, please allow me to share a real-world example." The room quieted, and all eyes turned to her. She advanced to the next slide, which displayed a middle-aged woman with a gentle smile, her mother. "This is my mother," Emily said softly. "She's a hard-working woman who devoted her life to raising me and my brother. But when she fell gravely ill, she signed loan documents for her medical bills without fully understanding them. As a result, she nearly lost everything. If she'd known her rights, things could have been very different." She went on to recount similar stories. Neighbors evicted because they misunderstood their lease, workers cheated out of their rightful wages. Emily spoke with genuine emotion, and the room seemed to lean in, moved by her sincerity. "I believe technology should protect the powerless, not just generate profit," she continued. "Lawbridge can change the way people learn and use the law, safeguarding their most fundamental rights." A young developer broke the silence. "Do you really think we can pull that off?" Emily turned to him, her voice as firm as steel. "I absolutely believe we can, and I hope everyone in this room believes it too. Help me make Lawbridge a reality so that people like my mother never have to suffer injustice again." Spontaneous, heartfelt applause erupted from the young developers. They no longer looked at Emily with doubt, but with genuine respect and admiration. Stephen clenched his jaw, rising to his feet with a cutting, mocking tone. "It's all very touching, Emily. But is that enough to convince the board to invest in such a risky, untested project?" Michael immediately stood, his voice firm as he addressed Stephen for the first time in front of everyone. "I think you're wrong, Stephen. We're here to create lasting value, not chase profit alone. Emily has given us the chance to make a real difference, and I will back Lawbridge with all our resources." He turned to Emily, pride and resolve in his eyes. "I have complete faith in you, Emily. You have my full support, and the company's. Anyone who isn't on board with this can step out now." Silence fell. Stephen's face darkened with anger and humiliation as he realized his position had been publicly undermined. The other employees watched him warily. Emily stood tall, feeling a surge of confidence. She knew her battle with Stephen Mitchell was far from over, but she had just won the most critical skirmish yet, securing her place at Carter Technologies. From that moment on, she understood that turning Lawbridge into a reality would require not only her intellect and determination, but also the strength to face Stephen's schemes and challenges still to come. Late one evening, long after most of Carter Technologies had gone home, Emily sat alone at her computer, poring over the Kessler Corp merger agreement Michael had entrusted her with. A nagging feeling told her something still lurked undiscovered, a serious threat hidden deep within the contract. Carefully flipping through every page, she stopped at Clause 12. The word "temporary" leapt off the page, seemingly innocuous, but now she realized it was the linchpin of a dangerous trap. Her heart thumped as she reread the language, uncovering a diabolical scheme buried behind that single word. According to this clause, if Carter Technologies' share price dipped, even briefly, after signing, Kessler Corp could cancel the merger with no penalty. Worse, they could reclaim the entire multi-million-dollar deposit, driving Carter Technologies to the brink of bankruptcy in days. A chill ran through Emily as the gravity of the threat sank in. She couldn't wait until morning. She grabbed her phone and dialed Michael Carter directly. "Mr. Carter," she said urgently, "you need to look at Clause 12 in the Kessler merger agreement. There's a temporary provision that could destroy our company." There was a stunned silence on the other end. Michael's voice trembled. "Emily, are you sure?" "Absolutely," she replied. "Kessler Corp has set a financial trap for us. If we don't fix it immediately, the company could be wiped out in an instant." Michael's tone turned grave. He opened his laptop and scanned Clause 12. His face drained when he saw the hidden scheme, so finely concealed, it was almost diabolical. "Thank you, Emily. I'm calling an emergency board meeting right now." 20 minutes later, the entire board was assembled in the large conference room. Michael's usual confidence was replaced by a sharp, urgent focus. Without preamble, he announced, "We have an emergency. Emily has discovered a dangerous Clause 12 in the Kessler merger agreement. If we don't address it immediately, we could lose billions in moments." A hush fell over the room as murmurs rippled through the directors. Stephen Mitchell's face went ashen, panic flickering in his eyes before he forced on a defiant expression. "I reviewed that contract carefully, Michael," Stephen protested. "I can't believe there's such a major oversight." Michael's gaze hardened as he turned on Stephen. "It wasn't you who found it, Stephen. It was Emily. If we hadn't caught this today, do you realize the consequences?" Stephen fell silent, his fists clenched beneath the table. The other executives exchanged wary glances, silently questioning his competence. Emily rose and spoke with calm authority. This clause allows Kessler Corp. To exploit any market fluctuation to cancel the merger without penalty. It's not a drafting error. It's a deliberate attempt to manipulate Carter Technologies. Her words cut through the room like a blade, leaving no doubt about the seriousness of the threat. Stephen's carefully laid scheme with Kessler lay in ruins. He refused to meet Michael's eyes, a mixture of desperation and fury on his face. The young waitress he'd once dismissed had outwitted him again with her keen intellect. Michael didn't hesitate. We need to amend Clause 12 right now. Remove that dangerous language and insert clear protective provisions for our company. The board quickly agreed, and the in-house counsel rushed to redraft the contract. Tension crackled in the air, but before long a safe, revised agreement was ready for signatures. When the meeting adjourned, Michael approached Emily, gratitude shining in his eyes. Emily, you just saved this entire company from a catastrophe. I owe you a huge thank you. Emily smiled modestly, pride and humility mingling in her gaze. Mr. Carter, I only did what I knew was right. In the back of the room, Stephen slipped out silently, drowning in bitterness and defeat. He knew he had underestimated Emily once again, and that only deepened his resentment toward the young woman. As for Emily, she recognized that the battle was far from over. She had won a crucial victory, but an adversary like Stephen Mitchell would not give up easily. From this moment on, she would have to remain vigilant and steadfast, for every step forward would hold new dangers and new schemes for her to confront. Emily's triumph in the meeting still reverberated through the corridors of Carter Technologies. Yet, deep inside her, unease lingered. Emily knew all too well that Stephen Mitchell would not give up easily, and that he would soon seek far more cunning ways to retaliate. Late one evening, when only a handful of lights remained on in the Carter Technologies offices, Emily sat at her desk, scrolling through the Kessler Corp. Merger contract that Michael had privately entrusted to her. A nagging intuition told her something was still amiss, a major threat waiting to be uncovered. Carefully turning page after page, she halted at Clause 12. The word temporary, innocent at first glance, leapt out at her as the linchpin of a dangerous trap. Furrowing her brow, she reread each sentence, her heart pounding as she grasped the extraordinarily subtle scheme hiding behind that single word. Under this provision, if Carter Technologies' share price dipped, even momentarily, after the merger closed, Kessler Corp. Could cancel the deal without penalty. Moreover, they could seize back their entire multi-million-dollar deposit, threatening to bankrupt Carter Technologies within days. A chill ran down Emily's spine as she realized the full scope of the danger. She couldn't wait until morning. She picked up her phone and called Michael Carter without hesitation. "Mr. Carter," she said urgently, "you need to look at Clause 12 in the Kessler merger agreement. There's a temporary provision so dangerous it could destroy our entire company." There was stunned silence on the other end. Finally, Michael's voice came, tense and clipped. "Emily, are you certain?" "Absolutely," she replied. "Kessler Corp. Has set a financial trap for us. If we don't amend it immediately, the company could collapse in an instant." Understanding the gravity, Michael opened his laptop and scanned the clause. His face went pale as he took in the ruthless design so expertly hidden in plain sight. "Thank you, Emily. I'm calling an emergency board meeting right now." Within 20 minutes, the full board was assembled in the large conference room. Michael, usually composed, now brimmed with urgency as he addressed the stunned group. "We have a critical situation with the Kessler merger agreement," he announced. "Emily has identified a dangerous Clause 12. Unless we correct it immediately, we stand to lose billions overnight." A hush fell over the room. Directors exchanged anxious glances while Stephen Mitchell's face drained of color, panic flickering in his eyes before he masked it with forced composure. "I reviewed that contract myself," Stephen protested, though his voice wavered. "I can't believe there'd be such a massive oversight." Michael fixed him with a steely gaze. "It wasn't you who caught it, Stephen. It was Emily. If we hadn't discovered this tonight, do you realize what the fallout would have been?" Stephen fell silent, his knuckles whitening as he gripped the table's edge. The other executives now looked at him with fresh doubt. Emily rose calmly, her voice carrying crisp authority. "This clause allows Kessler Corp. to exploit any market fluctuation to void the merger without consequence. It's not an accident. It's a deliberate attempt to manipulate Carter Technologies." Her words landed like a hammer, stripping away any remaining pretense. Stephen, whose secret alliance with Kessler lay in ruins, couldn't meet Michael's eye. A storm of desperation and fury brewing behind his mask. Michael wasted no time. "We need to remove that dangerous language from Clause 12 at once and insert clear protections for our company." The board unanimously agreed, and the in-house legal team sprang into action. Though the atmosphere crackled with tension, the revised secure agreement was soon ready for signatures. When the meeting adjourned, Michael approached Emily, gratitude shining in his eyes. "Emily, you just saved this company from a catastrophe. I owe you more than I can say." Emily offered a humble smile, her pride tempered by modesty. "Mr. Carter, I just did what I knew was right." In the back of the room, Stephen slipped away, bitterness and defeat weighing on him. He realized he had underestimated Emily once again, and the realization only fanned the flames of his hatred. As for Emily, she understood that although she had achieved a pivotal victory, the war was far from over. She would need to stay vigilant, for every step forward would carry fresh dangers and hidden schemes she would have to face. Yet in that moment, Emily felt an unwavering resolve. She had moved from an anonymous café waitress to a pivotal figure in a major corporation. But more importantly, she had proven that knowledge, courage, and perseverance can shatter any barrier, no matter how deeply entrenched in prejudice or injustice. That afternoon, after everyone else had departed, Emily returned to her new office. Light from the floor-to-ceiling windows bathed her spacious desk, where a polished nameplate now read, "Emily Davis, Director of Legal Innovation, Carter Technologies." She sat down, heart still racing as she touched the nameplate. Pulling out her phone, she called her mother and brother to share the news. When her mother's joyous, tear-choked voice answered, Emily felt a surge of emotion. "Mom," she whispered, steadying her voice, "we did it. From now on, no one will ever look down on us again." Meanwhile, in a shadowed corner of the city, Stephen Mitchell sat in his dark apartment, consumed by hatred and resentment. He knew he had lost a great deal, but more than anything, his loathing for Emily Davis had grown fiercer. Resolute, he vowed this was far from the end. He would find a way to exact his revenge, and Emily would pay for ruining his lifetime's work. Yet even he had to acknowledge, Emily Davis was no longer the meek girl he once dismissed. She had become his most formidable adversary. Alone in her office, Emily gazed out across Atlanta's skyline, determination blazing in her eyes. She knew the challenges and dangers ahead were real, but she also knew she would never face them alone again. And from this moment on, Emily Davis stepped into the light, ready not only to fight for her dreams, but to become a guiding beacon for countless others in need of her help. Her journey from anonymous waitress to pioneer of justice and equality had only just begun. In the days following Emily's promotion to Director of Legal Innovation, her name spread like wildfire across Atlanta's news outlets. At first, the headlines were inspiring and celebratory, from café server to corporate leader. But within days the tide turned. Doubts and snide questions began to appear on business forums and social media. Can a former waitress really lead a major legal project? Is this just a cheap PR stunt by Carter Technologies? At the same time, the mood in Carter Technologies' boardroom grew palpably tense. Major investors, those who held the real power, started pressing Michael about his decision to hand such a critical role to Emily. Richard Collins, a veteran director with silver hair and a steely gaze, spoke up with vehemence. "Michael, are you sure you're not rushing into this? Emily Davis has no formal legal credentials and no executive experience. How can we entrust a strategic project like Lawbridge to someone like her?" Murmurs of agreement rippled through the board. Michael steadied himself, scanning the skeptical faces. He knew that defending Emily here would be tougher than any challenge he had faced before. Stephen Mitchell watched in the corner, a faint smirk playing on his lips. He quietly fed negative tidbits about Emily to the media, stoking the backlash even further. A few days later, pressure reached a boiling point. An emergency board meeting was called, and both Michael and Emily were summoned. As they sat side by side, Emily felt the scrutiny of every senior director's doubtful stare. "Ms. Davis," Collins began again, his tone icy with suspicion. "Can you explain why this board should trust a strategic initiative to someone without any formal legal degree?" Emily rose slowly and looked directly at Collins and the other directors. Her voice was calm but unwavering. "I understand your concerns, but may I ask, when did formal credentials become the sole measure of knowledge, ability, and dedication? I spent years teaching myself the law, diving deep into real-world legal issues, and, most importantly, I've seen firsthand how loved ones suffer when they lack legal understanding." She paused, letting her words settle in the room. "Lawbridge isn't just a project. It's my dream and my calling. If you believe this is merely a PR gimmick, let my results speak for themselves. I will take full responsibility for this initiative." Collins arched an eyebrow. "Promises won't replace concrete evidence, Miss Davis. We need additional oversight, someone experienced to ensure the project's success." Silence fell as all eyes turned to Michael, awaiting his verdict. He rose, his voice strong and clear. "Let me say this once more to the board. I have absolute confidence in Emily Davis. Not only has she proven her exceptional capability through tangible contributions, but she's also shown the courage and tenacity to overcome every obstacle since joining this company." He paused, fixing his gaze on Stephen Mitchell, his tone sharpening. "I'm well aware of the schemes to undermine her position, but I declare here and now, as long as I lead Carter Technologies, I stand with Emily, no matter the cost." Michael's words echoed through the silent boardroom. Stephen's face drained of color as his plot crumbled once again under the power of Michael's unwavering support. Emily met Michael's eye, her heart swelling with new strength and confidence. She knew now, more than ever, that Michael's absolute trust was her greatest asset in this fierce battle. As they left the boardroom, the storm of public opinion outside still raged, but Emily carried an unshakable certainty. She was not alone. And Stephen Mitchell, nursing his bitter defeat, swore that this was far from over, vowing to strike back and topple Emily Davis by any means necessary. In the days following Michael's impassioned declaration before the board, Carter Technologies threw every resource into preparing for Lawbridge's official launch. Emily understood that this moment wasn't just a make-or-break point for the project. It was her chance to prove her true worth and capabilities to the world. That morning, Atlanta's largest auditorium was packed to the rafters. Hundreds of journalists, business leaders, major investors, and eager citizens arrived early, buzzing with anticipation for the speech by the young woman who had become the talk of the town. Media crews pressed in around the stage, cameras at the ready to capture every word and expression. From behind the curtain, Emily took in the sight of the crowded hall. Her heart pounded, but her confidence and resolve were stronger than ever. Michael stood beside her and gave her shoulder a reassuring squeeze, his eyes shining with belief. "Emily," he whispered, "this is your moment. Speak from the heart, you're not alone up there." With that, she drew a steadying breath and stepped onto the stage to thunderous applause. A wall of camera flashes dazzled her for a moment, but when her eyes found her mother and little brother Danny in the front row, proud smiles on their faces, her nerves melted away. She began in a clear, earnest voice. "Good morning, everyone. My name is Emily Davis, and today I want to share a story with you." Instantly, the room fell silent. Every gaze was fixed on her. "I was born and raised in a struggling household right here in this city. My mother's the strongest person I know. She worked tirelessly her entire life to raise my brother and me. Yet there was one thing she never had, a clear understanding of her basic legal rights." Emily paused, her eyes glistening as she spoke of her mother. Her voice softened, yet carried weight. "When my mother fell gravely ill, she was forced to sign loan documents for her medical bills, documents she couldn't fully comprehend. As a result, we nearly lost everything. The little house she had saved for was seized, and we were left with nothing. In that moment, I realized that without legal knowledge, any of us can become victims of injustice." The auditorium was profoundly moved. You could have heard a pin drop. Emily continued, "That's why I created Lawbridge, a simple yet powerful app that helps ordinary people, regardless of their legal background, understand their fundamental rights. Lawbridge is more than a tech project. It's my dream, the promise I made to my mother and my commitment to this community." At the back of the hall, Stephen Mitchell watched coldly, resentment darkening his gaze. He'd spent days leaking negative stories to undermine this event. But now, faced with Emily's heartfelt, authentic address, he began to see that her real power lay not in credentials or status, but in her ability to reach people's hearts and earn their trust. Though he recognized his mistake in underestimating her, his hatred and thirst for revenge burned brighter than ever. On stage, Emily raised her voice, brimming with passion. "I firmly believe that when we're equipped with the right knowledge, we become far stronger. Lawbridge is the bridge connecting legal understanding to every individual, so no one else must endure what my family did." As her final words rang out, the audience erupted into applause like thunder. Her mother wept openly with pride in the front row. Reporters leapt to their feet, capturing every unforgettable moment. Within hours, headlines across major outlets celebrated Lawbridge, a breakthrough legal app, born from a waitress's inspiring journey. Emily Davis's unwavering promise for justice and equality. Positive commentary and community support quickly drowned out earlier critics. Emily became a new symbol of resilience, courage, and the transformative power of knowledge. After the event, Michael found Emily backstage and beamed with pride. "I knew you could do it, Emily. Today you didn't just launch an app, you gave hope and confidence to so many." Emily returned his smile, gratitude shining in her eyes. "I couldn't have done this without your unwavering trust and support, Mr. Carter. But I know this is just the beginning. We've got many challenges ahead." Meanwhile, in a shadowed corner of the city, Stephen slipped away from the auditorium, his face twisted with rage and bitterness. Though Emily's speech had moved the entire city, he vowed that the battle was far from over, and that he would stop at nothing to make her pay for ruining his life's work. In the days following the emotional Lawbridge launch, Emily's schedule became busier than ever. Calls and emails poured in from social organizations, law firms, major universities, and journalists nationwide. But among them all was one unexpected call, one that would change her entire journey. That morning, just as Emily walked into her Carter Technologies office, her phone rang from an unknown number. A formal voice said, "Hello, Ms. Davis. I'm calling from the White House. The President has just learned about your Lawbridge project and would very much like to speak with you." Emily froze, stunned. Her heart pounded with pride and disbelief. Moments later, the President's calm, authoritative voice came through. "Emily, I've heard your story and am deeply impressed by what you've accomplished. I believe Lawbridge is a vital initiative that can benefit millions of Americans. The federal government wants to partner with you to roll out this app nationwide." Though the call was brief, it transformed Emily's life. From an anonymous café waitress, she now faced the opportunity to collaborate with the highest office in the land to bring about real change for her country. Elsewhere, in a darkened room, Stephen Mitchell watched the explosion of news coverage on his TV, images of Emily and Lawbridge dominating every major network. Clenching his fists in rage and despair, he realized that White House support would be the final blow to his revenge plot. Yet his hatred had not cooled. Stephen resolved to enact one last desperate scheme to destroy the reputation and career Emily had fought so hard to build. Back at Carter Technologies, word of the White House call spread instantly, surprising and thrilling everyone. Michael Carter convened a special company-wide meeting and, with emotion, announced, "Today, Carter Technologies can proudly say we've helped spark real, meaningful social change. Emily Davis hasn't just created an amazing app, she's inspired hope, trust, and fairness for countless people. I couldn't be prouder that she represents our company." Thunderous applause and congratulations filled the room. Tears welled in Emily's eyes, her pride and emotion overwhelming. Yet, amid the celebration, she realized there was still another dream she'd long postponed, a promise to herself and her family. A few days later, Emily met with Michael in his private office and announced her intention to return to Emory University to complete the law degree she'd once dreamed of. Michael's face softened with pride as he immediately supported her decision. "I fully back this, Emily. Emory will be proud to welcome you back, and I believe your return will inspire many other students." Soon after, Emory formally invited Emily to re-enroll, offering her a full scholarship and hosting a special ceremony to honor her achievements. At that ceremony, standing before fellow students, faculty, and her beaming family, Emily spoke with quiet strength. "Today, I stand here, not to recount what I've achieved, but to share the journey I've taken. I left these halls once because of family hardship and challenges that seemed insurmountable. But in those darkest times, I learned that no bit of knowledge is wasted, and no dream is ever too late. I hope my story inspires each of you to hold fast to your own belief in yourselves." The crowd rose in powerful applause, eyes glistening with tears. Emily Davis, a once ordinary waitress, had become a living symbol of courage, perseverance, and faith in justice and equality. Yet in the shadows, Stephen Mitchell quietly prepared his final plan. He would use every resource and tactic at his disposal to strike back at Emily and obliterate her hard-won reputation. He knew it was his last chance, and this time he would not fail. The ultimate, fiercest showdown awaited Emily on the horizon. However, even as the applause and accolades from the Emery ceremony still echoed in her mind, Emily realized she faced one final, daunting challenge, and its name was Stephen Mitchell. Driven by desperation and seething hatred, Stephen decided to gamble everything on one last, all-out effort to destroy Emily and derail Lawbridge. Behind the scenes, he crafted a series of fake emails and doctored documents designed to sow confusion in the public sphere, while spreading rumors that Emily lacked the competence to lead such a critical project. Stephen knew that even the smallest scandal could shatter the hard-won progress Emily had fought so tirelessly to build. One morning, as Emily arrived at the office for a pivotal meeting about rolling out Lawbridge nationwide, she was stunned to discover her access to the security system and internal data had been completely revoked. She immediately reached out to IT, only to receive a bewildering response. "We've been instructed by legal to lock your account due to suspected serious security policy violations." Emily recognized immediately that this was Stephen's final sabotage attempt. Momentarily taken aback, she gathered herself and knew she couldn't stay silent. She headed straight to Michael's office to lay everything out. When she entered, Michael was in a closed meeting with the board, an atmosphere thick with tension. Stephen was there too, his expression icy but tinged with a triumphant smirk. Before Emily could speak, Stephen sneered. "Emily, I'm surprised you even have the nerve to show up after everything that's happened." Emily didn't respond at once. Instead, she calmly stepped to the center of the room, locking eyes with Stephen, and spoke with unwavering clarity. "I'm here to expose the sabotage campaign you've been running, Mr. Mitchell." Without giving him a chance to react, Emily opened her laptop and mirrored her screen onto the meeting's big monitor. Instantly, incontrovertible evidence filled the display. Emails, covert exchanges, and authenticated records proving Stephen had orchestrated false accusations and malicious interference to undermine her work. The board sat in stunned silence as they took in the damning proof against Stephen, a man they had once trusted. Michael rose slowly, his face a mixture of anger and betrayal. "Stephen, I never imagined you capable of something this vile. You've not only betrayed Emily, you've betrayed all of us." Caught completely off guard and unable to defend himself, Stephen tried to protest in desperation. "Michael, this is all a misunderstanding. I was only trying to protect the company from someone as unqualified as her." Michael cut him off, his voice now cold and authoritative. "You're wrong, Stephen. The only one unqualified here is you." Effective immediately, Stephen Mitchell is no longer a member of Carter Technologies. I want you out of this building and never to return. Stephen's proud, cold facade crumbled into humiliation and despair. He offered no further excuses, bowed his head, and slipped from the room to the uncomfortable silence of those watching. The door slammed shut behind him like a bitter full stop on all his clandestine schemes. Emily stood quietly, a profound sense of relief and justice washing over her for the first time. She turned to Michael, who had defended and believed in her unconditionally, and said softly, her voice thick with gratitude, "Thank you, Mr. Carter, for never doubting me." Michael smiled, pride and sincerity shining in his eyes. "No, Emily, it is I who should thank you. Your strength, courage, and integrity have inspired us all. You've won this battle fairly and convincingly." Emily realized that this final trial was more than a personal victory. It was proof that truth, honesty, and unwavering resolve can overcome even the darkest conspiracies and greatest injustices. In the days that followed, Carter Technologies entered a new era of optimism and trust under Emily's dynamic leadership. Her reputation was firmly cemented, and no one questioned her ability or character again. As for Stephen Mitchell, he left the company in ignominious disgrace, forced to face the consequences of his own betrayal and wrongdoing. Standing by her office window, looking out over the vast sky, Emily felt a deep confidence in the future. Her arduous journey had proven one vital truth: goodness and integrity ultimately prevail. No obstacle is too great for a determined heart. Emily Davis was no longer just an executive or a symbol. She was the living embodiment of hope and justice, a guiding light for countless others. And now, more than ever, she knew her life had truly moved into a promising, meaningful new chapter. 1 year after her decisive victory over Stephen Mitchell, Emily stood bathed in the warm afternoon sun in a small Alabama community center, looking out at the faces of hundreds of eager attendees. Lawbridge was no longer just a little idea on paper. It had grown strong and been rolled out across 27 states, bringing opportunity, hope, and justice to thousands of underprivileged people nationwide. Emily stepped up to the podium, her eyes shining, her smile both confident and gentle as she surveyed the diverse crowd. Ambitious young people, struggling families, and elderly citizens who had once been crushed by life, now finding new hope thanks to Lawbridge. She began in a calm but powerful voice, full of feeling. "A year ago, I stood before many of you and said we needed a legal bridge to connect knowledge and rights for everyone. Today, I'm proud to say we have built that bridge. Lawbridge is more than a tech app. It stands for faith, hope, and fairness for every one of us." The audience erupted into thunderous applause, eyes shining with renewed hope. Emily's heart swelled, and she continued, her tone deepening with warmth. "But I'm not here to talk about myself. I'm here to speak to you, especially the young people in this room, who must never give up on your dreams no matter how tough your circumstances. I used to serve coffee in a tiny Atlanta café. I lost my chance to study at Emory because of family hardship, but I never gave up." Her gaze softened as she scanned the faces of the youth before her, emotion in her voice. "I saw my mother lose everything simply because she didn't understand her basic legal rights. Today, she's sitting right here, and she knows that none of us will have to suffer injustice like that again, because Lawbridge is here to protect and guide us all." Emily looked tenderly toward her mother in the front row, who was wiping tears of pride from her cheeks. The crowd rose to their feet again in enthusiastic applause, their eyes bright with determination and emotion. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away, Stephen Mitchell sat alone in his dark suburban Atlanta apartment, staring blankly at the TV screen broadcasting Emily's inspiring address on national television. He was no longer the powerful, ambitious man he once was. He had lost everything: his reputation, his career, and his self-respect. His former bitterness and hatred had been replaced by deep regret and pain, as he realized he had brought his own downfall with his schemes and deceit. Back at the community center, Emily closed her speech with a heartfelt pledge. "I promise each of you here today that for as long as I have strength and faith, I will keep fighting to bring justice, knowledge, and hope to everyone, so no one has to endure what my family and I once went through. Remember, each of us can change the world, as long as we believe in ourselves and never give up." The entire audience leapt to their feet, many weeping with emotion. A young man in the front shouted, his voice brimming with resolve, "We'll follow you, Emily. Thank you for showing us that we can do it." That evening, As the sunset cast its gentle glow over Atlanta's streets, Emily returned to Old Town Café, the place where her journey began. Michael Carter was waiting at her favorite table, smiling with pride and joy. "I knew you'd come back here, Emily. There's no place more fitting to close this chapter," he said. Emily sat down, taking in the cozy cafe that had once been her whole world. Michael slid her a cup of coffee, his eyes filled with emotion. "From one simple cup of coffee, we created something extraordinary. Congratulations, Emily. You truly have changed the world." Emily smiled, raising her cup. "I couldn't have done any of this without your trust and support. But most of all, thank you for giving me the chance to prove that justice, knowledge, and perseverance are the greatest forces of all." They clinked cups, gratitude and emotion shining in their eyes. The golden light of sunset filtered through the windows, illuminating the cafe in a soft, warm glow, a living testament to the power of determination, faith in justice, and hope. Outside, life continued with all its challenges, but in that peaceful afternoon, Emily and Michael knew they had built a lasting legacy, not just in Lawbridge, but in the trust, hope, and ability to change lives they had fostered. And for Emily Davis, her journey had become a relentless source of inspiration, a bright, unquenchable light for everyone who believes in justice and perseverance through life's ups and downs. That is the story of Emily Davis, from an anonymous cafe waitress to a trailblazer bringing justice and hope to thousands. What do you think of Emily's extraordinary path? If it were you, would you have the courage and determination she did? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story inspired you, please like and share to spread its powerful message, and be sure to subscribe so you won't miss our next moving and fascinating stories. Thank you so much, and see you in the next video.